Ambassador Daniel Wright stood at the observation deck of the UES Endeavour, watching the stars streak by as they approached the Viridian system. The ship hummed quietly around him, its powerful engines carrying Earth's best hope for peaceful first contact with the Krell. Nervous, Captain Lisa Martinez joined him by the viewport, her uniform crisp and her posture straight despite having been on duty for 12 hours. Daniel smiled faintly. Cautiously optimistic. Though 30 years in diplomacy has taught me that first, impressions rarely tell the whole story. Well, your record speaks for itself. 3 interspecies conflicts resolved without bloodshed. If anyone can establish peace with the Krell, it's you. Lisa checked her tablet. We'll reach their outer patrol zone in 6 hours. You should rest while you can. Daniel nodded but made no move to leave. The weight of his mission kept him rooted, to the spot. Earth's first contact with the Krell 3 months ago had been brief, just a series of exchanged signals after human exploratory vessels detected their communications. The Krell had invited a diplomatic mission with surprising speed, which Earth's United Council had eagerly accepted. What troubles you, Ambassador? Dr. Alan Brooks approached carrying 2 steaming cups. The xenobiologist handed one to Daniel. Thank you. Daniel sipped the bitter coffee. I've been reviewing our intelligence on the Krell. It's remarkably thin. Brooks nodded. They've been careful about what information they've shared. We know they have a rigid social hierarchy and technology that's at least 50 years ahead of ours. Their biology appears reptilian-based, though adapted for their high-gravity world. And they've been watching us for decades before making contact, Daniel added. That suggests patience and careful planning. Or they were waiting for something specific, Captain Martinez said quietly. The trio fell silent, contemplating the implications. The Endeavour continued its steady journey toward an uncertain welcome. 4 hours later, Daniel sat in his quarters reviewing the final diplomatic protocols when the ship's alert system chimed. Ambassador, right to the bridge, Lisa's voice came, over the comm. We have company earlier than expected. When Daniel arrived, the bridge was a flurry of controlled activity. On the main view screen, 5 sleek vessels approached in perfect formation. Krell escort ships, Lisa explained. No warning. They just appeared at the edge of our sensor range. Open a channel, Daniel said, straightening his jacket. The screen flickered, revealing a Krell officer. The alien's scaled face was an impassive mask, vertical pupils narrowing as they studied Daniel. The Krell's neck frill remained flat, a neutral posture, according to the limited cultural briefings. Ambassador Right of Earth, Daniel began. We come in peace and friendship, the Krell officer blinked slowly. Ambassador, I am Sub-Commander Nexaval of the Krell Dominion. You will follow our escort to the designated coordinates. Deviation will be considered hostile. The transmission ended abruptly. Not the warmest welcome, Dr. Brooks murmured. Daniel frowned. That's not necessarily concerning. Many species consider displays of emotion to be diplomatic weaknesses. Captain Martinez gave orders to follow the escort at a respectful distance. The Krell ships were impressive, each nearly twice the size of the Endeavour, with weapon ports clearly visible along their hulls. Those aren't diplomatic vessels, Lisa noted quietly to Daniel. Those are warships. Perhaps a display of strength is their version of a ceremonial welcome, Daniel replied, though he shared her concern. As they approached the Krell homeworld of Verid Prime, Daniel studied the planet with growing fascination. Swirling azure clouds covered much of the surface, occasionally revealing glimpses of rusty landmasses and deep emerald seas. Remarkable, Dr. Brooks said, joining Daniel at the view screen. Their atmosphere has nearly twice the oxygen density of Earth's. No wonder their technology developed so rapidly. Their biochemistry must operate at an accelerated rate compared to ours. The Endeavour was directed to establish orbit around Verid Prime's larger moon, a respectful distance from the planet itself. Within the hour, a transmission arrived with instructions for the diplomatic party to board a Krell shuttle. They want only you, Dr. Brooks, and 2 security officers, Lisa told Daniel, clearly unhappy with the arrangement. I don't like it. Standard procedure for many species, Daniel assured her. They're limiting exposure to their world. Still, we'll be maintaining constant communication, Lisa insisted. At the first sign of trouble, we're coming to get you. Daniel nodded gratefully. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. The Krell shuttle was sleek and efficient, its interior lit with a bluish light that made human skin look sickly. The seats were uncomfortable for human anatomy, clearly not designed with them in mind. As they descended toward the Krell capital city, Daniel observed the landscape below. Massive geometric structures rose from the rusty plains connected by elevated transport tubes. There were no visible parks or natural spaces. Everything appeared designed for maximum efficiency. Fascinating architecture, Dr. Brooks whispered. Notice how everything radiates outward from that central structure? Their society seems to be physically organized around their hierarchy. Daniel nodded. Keep your observations coming, but quietly. The HFY shuttle landed on a platform extending from an imposing tower. As the doors opened, Daniel got his first breath of Krell air. Heavy, slightly metallic, but breathable thanks to the supplements they had taken before departure. 5 Krell officials waited in perfect formation. Their scales gleamed in various shades of copper and bronze with elaborate markings that presumably denoted rank. The center figure stood slightly forward, its neck frill extending partially, a sign of formal greeting. Ambassador Wright, the Krell spoke, its translator converting the series of clicks and hisses into English. I am High Commander Vexar. You are permitted on Verid Prime to discuss terms of peace between our species. Daniel stepped forward and offered the greeting gesture they had been advised to use, both hands open at chest level, palms forward. High Commander, we are honored by your welcome. Earth looks forward to establishing friendly relations with the Krell Dominion. Vexar's eyes narrowed slightly. Follow, the council awaits. As they walked through the towering corridors, Daniel noticed the Krell workers they passed immediately pressing themselves against walls, heads lowered as Vexar approached. The hierarchy here wasn't just social, it was enforced through what appeared to be fear. Dr. Brooks caught Daniel's eye and tapped his datapad subtly. On it was a message. Scan shows massive energy readings below us. Military. Daniel gave an almost imperceptible nod. The diplomatic briefings had mentioned nothing about underground facilities. They were led into a vast chamber where 7 Krell sat on elevated platforms. The room was deliberately designed to place visitors at a lower position, another psychological tactic Daniel had encountered before. The human ambassador, Vexar announced. The central Krell, distinguished by elaborate gold markings, leaned forward. So this is the species that has expanded across 17 worlds in merely 2 centuries. Remarkable progress for such emotional beings. Daniel smiled diplomatically. We are curious by nature, Supreme Leader, and we believe diversity brings strength. An interesting perspective, the leader replied. We have studied your transmissions for many cycles. Your conflicts puzzle us. You fight amongst yourselves, yet achieve technological advancement. We've learned from our mistakes, Daniel said, which is why we now seek peaceful relations with all intelligent life. The Supreme Leader made a sound that the translator didn't catch. Something like amusement, perhaps? Peace is indeed valuable, the leader finally responded. We will begin formal discussions tomorrow. Tonight, you will be our honored guests. As they were escorted to their quarters, Daniel's communication device vibrated. It was a secure message from Captain Martinez. Detecting massive fleet movements on far side of planet. At least 200 vessels. Exercise extreme caution. Daniel kept his expression neutral as they entered the luxurious but clearly monitored guest chambers. The Krell's definition of peace was beginning to concern him greatly. Later that night, as Dr. Brooks was scanning their food for toxins, he whispered, I've been analyzing their language database. There's something odd about their word for peace. Its root form is identical to their word for submission. Daniel nodded slowly. Then we'd better be very careful about what exactly we're agreeing to. Outside their window, the 3 moons of Verid Prime cast long shadows across a world that suddenly seemed much more dangerous than when they had arrived. Dawn on Verid Prime came suddenly, as the planet's rapid rotation brought its harsh sun climbing quickly over the horizon. Daniel Wright had barely slept. He spent most of the night reviewing communications with Captain Martinez and analyzing what little they knew about Krell negotiation tactics. "You look terrible," Dr. Brooks said, entering Daniel's quarters with a protein bar from their Earth supplies. "Did you sleep at all?" Daniel took the offered food gratefully. "An hour, maybe. Something doesn't add up about this whole situation." "The Krell are definitely hiding something," Brooks agreed, lowering his voice. "I've been running analysis on their biological readings when they don't think we're watching. Their body temperatures rise significantly whenever peace negotiations are mentioned. In humans, that might indicate lying," Daniel said. "In Krell, it appears to indicate anticipation or excitement." A chime at the door interrupted them. A Krell attendant stood waiting, its scales a duller bronze than the officials they had met yesterday. "Human ambassador," the Krell said flatly. "The council chamber awaits your presence." "Now," Daniel nodded. "We'll need 5 minutes to prepare." 2 minutes, the Krell responded. "Delay disrespects the Supreme Leader." After the attendant left, Daniel activated his secure comm link. "Lisa, maintain alert status. If you don't hear from me every 2 hours, consider the diplomatic mission compromised." "Understood," Captain Martinez replied. "Be careful, Daniel. Our scans detected unusual activity around the Endeavor during the night cycle. I think they were probing our defenses." Daniel pocketed the communications device and straightened his jacket. "Let's go make peace, Doctor. Real peace, not whatever the Krell think it means." The Krell council chamber was even more imposing in the daylight. Sunlight streamed through crystalline panels, creating patterns that highlighted the raised dais where the 7 Krell leaders sat. Daniel noticed that today, dozens of other Krell officials lined the walls, watching silently. High Commander Vexar approached as they entered. "Ambassador Wright, you appear fatigued. Does our atmosphere disturb your sleep cycle?" Daniel smiled diplomatically. "New environments always require adjustment. I appreciate your concern." Vexar's neck frill fluttered slightly, a gesture Daniel couldn't interpret. "The Supreme Leader wishes to begin immediately with treaty discussions." The Supreme Leader's voice boomed across the chamber without apparent amplification. "Ambassador of Earth, we propose a simple arrangement between our species. The Krell Dominion offers protection to developing species. In exchange, we require certain considerations." Daniel stepped forward. "Earth appreciates your offer, Supreme Leader. Perhaps you could outline these considerations in more detail?" Over the next 3 hours, the Krell leaders presented their version of a peace treaty. Through careful questioning, Daniel began to understand their true intentions. The treaty would require Earth to allow Krell observers on all human worlds, share all technological advancements with the Krell Dominion permit, Krell vessels unrestricted, access to human spaceplace Krell advisors in key government positions in return. The Krell would guarantee human independence and provide limited technological insights. During a brief recess, Communications Officer Julia Reed, who had joined them from the Endeavor that morning, approached Daniel quietly. "Ambassador, I've been analyzing their language patterns," she whispered. "They're using different words when speaking among themselves versus what's being translated to us. What they call protection translates more accurately as oversight or control." Daniel nodded grimly. "Keep monitoring. Document everything." When negotiations resumed, Daniel began carefully pushing back on certain terms. Each time, the Supreme Leader would appear to concede the point, only to have it reappear in different wording later. "Your treaty offers much," Daniel said carefully. "But true peace must be built on equal standing. Some of these terms suggest a relationship that is unbalanced." The Supreme Leader's eyes narrowed. "Your species is young, Ambassador Wright. The galaxy contains threats you cannot imagine. Our Dominion offers security that has preserved peace for 1,000 years. 1,000 years is impressive," Daniel acknowledged. "Earth has only achieved global unity in the past century. Perhaps we could start with cultural exchange programs rather than such comprehensive integration." A ripple of clicking sounds, possibly disapproval, spread through the watching Krell. Ambassador Wright, High Commander Vexar interjected. Perhaps you would benefit from seeing the security we provide. I invite you to tour our defensive installations tomorrow. I would be honored, Daniel replied, recognizing both the opportunity for intelligence gathering and the thinly veiled display of force it represented. As the session ended, Security Chief Paul Dawson approached Daniel discreetly. Sir, I've discovered listening devices in our quarters. Sophisticated ones. Expected but concerning, Daniel replied quietly. Anything else? Yes, sir. The food they're providing. Dr. Brooks found compounds that would gradually increase human suggestibility. Not enough to be obvious, but over days, Daniel nodded. Use only our supplies. Now I need to send a message to Captain Martinez, but they're undoubtedly monitoring all standard communications. We prepared for that, Dawson said. The cultural gift exchange scheduled for this evening. Your speech includes the coded message patterns we established before landing. That evening, in an elaborate ceremonial hall, Daniel presented Earth's gifts to the Krell leadership: artwork, music recordings, and scientific texts. As he gave his prepared speech about cultural understanding, he carefully emphasized certain words and phrases that would alert Captain Martinez to prepare for potential evacuation. After the ceremony, the Supreme Leader approached Daniel. Your species values beauty in curious ways, the leader observed. Function without purpose seems wasteful. We find that creativity enhances all aspects of life, Daniel replied, including problem-solving and diplomacy. An interesting perspective. Tomorrow you will sign our preliminary accord before touring our military facilities. It is merely a formality before the final treaty. Daniel bowed slightly. I look forward to it. Later that night, alone in his quarters with anti-surveillance measures activated, Daniel received an encrypted message from the Endeavor. It contained images captured by the ship's advanced sensors, massive Krell fleet movements, vessels gathering in formation beyond Verid Prime's third moon. More disturbing was the intelligence Captain Martinez had managed to extract from intercepted Krell communications. The Krell weren't planning for peace. They were calculating how quickly they could occupy Earth's colonies once the treaty was signed. Daniel sat in the dim light, planning his next move carefully. Tomorrow, he would sign their preliminary accord. With a smile on his face and deception in his heart, the Krell thought they were dealing with a naive species ready for submission. They were about to learn how dangerous humans could be when backed into a corner. The game of diplomatic deception had begun, and despite being outnumbered and outgunned on an alien world, Daniel had one advantage. The Krell had never faced human ingenuity before. Morning arrived on Verid Prime with an air of ceremony. Krell officials moved with greater purpose, and the corridors leading to the council chamber were lined with armed guards. Daniel Wright straightened his formal diplomatic uniform as he prepared to sign the preliminary accord, a document he had no intention of honoring. Remember the plan, he whispered to Dr. Brooks and Officer Reed. Appear cooperative, gather everything you can, and be ready to move quickly. In his quarters, Daniel had spent the night carefully crafting his approach. The Krell believed humans were straightforward and easily manipulated. He would use that misconception against them. The signing ceremony was elaborate. Hundreds of Krell officials gathered in the massive chamber, their scales gleaming under the bright lights. The 7 council members sat elevated above everyone else, with the Supreme Leader watching Daniel with cold, reptilian eyes. Today marks the beginning of a new era, the Supreme Leader announced. The human species joins the protection of the Krell Dominion. Daniel stepped forward with a humble smile. We are grateful for your generosity, he said, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. As he signed the preliminary accord with a steady hand, Daniel noticed High Commander Vexar studying him intently. Beside Vexar stood a previously unintroduced Krell with darker scales and eyes that never left Daniel, clearly an intelligence officer. Ambassador Wright, Vexar said after the signing. This is Intelligence Officer Zintak. He will escort you on your tour of our defensive installations. Daniel nodded respectfully. I look forward to learning more about the protection you offer. The tour was clearly meant to intimidate. Zintok led them through massive weapon factories, training grounds for Krell soldiers, and finally to an overlook showing a vast shipyard where dozens of warships were under construction. "Impressive," Daniel commented. "Are all these preparations necessary for peacetime?" Zintok's neck frill twitched slightly. "Peace requires strength. The Dominion faces many threats." "Of course," Daniel said. "Earth has a similar saying, speak softly and carry a big stick." "An apt phrase," Zintok replied, "though I note humans often speak loudly while reaching for hidden weapons." The implication was clear. The intelligence officer suspected Daniel's intentions weren't as cooperative as they appeared. Throughout the tour, Daniel carefully observed and memorized the layout of key facilities. When they paused at a command center, he noted the display showing Krell fleet positions, including several near Earth's outer colonies that had never been disclosed. That evening, Daniel requested permission to perform a traditional Earth ceremony, AI, cultural display involving music and projected images of Earth. The Krell, curious about human customs, agreed. The real purpose was far more strategic. The music contained embedded patterns that transmitted data to the Endeavor in orbit, while the cultural display served as cover. As Daniel spoke about Earth's history and values, his carefully chosen words conveyed additional coded information. "Earth's journey to the stars began with small steps," Daniel said, emphasizing certain syllables that formed a secondary message about Krell fleet positions. "We value exploration and discovery above all else." Another coded segment about weapons capabilities. After the presentation, Daniel was approached by Captain Lisa Martinez's first officer, Eric Hernandez, who had been granted permission to attend as part of the cultural exchange. "Excellent presentation, Ambassador," Hernandez said, clasping Daniel's hand. The handshake passed a tiny data chip containing updated instructions from Captain Martinez. Later in his quarters, Daniel reviewed the information. The Endeavor had detected increasing Krell fleet activity. More concerning was the discovery that 3 human outposts had already received cultural envoys from the Krell, almost certainly advance operatives for the planned takeover. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. It was Officer Reed, her face pale. "Ambassador, Greg Williams is dead," she whispered, referring to one of the junior diplomats. "What happened?" Daniel asked, immediately activating the anti-surveillance device. "Official story is he suffered a reaction to the local atmosphere. But I saw him earlier today. He mentioned finding something in the Krell database about designated human territories. He was going to bring you the information tonight." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. The first casualty in what was rapidly becoming a silent war. "We need to accelerate our timeline," he decided. "The Krell are moving faster than we anticipated." The next morning, Daniel noticed Zintok following him more obviously, restricting his movements and limiting his conversations with the human team. The intelligence officer's suspicion was growing. During that day's negotiation session, the Krell pushed hard for immediate access to Earth's defense systems. "As your protectors, we must have complete integration with your planetary defenses," Vexar insisted. "It is for your own security." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "A reasonable request. However, our systems require special human interfaces. Perhaps we could arrange for a Krell delegation to visit Earth to better understand our technology." "Unnecessary," the Supreme Leader cut in. "Your technical specifications will be sufficient. We will provide the necessary adaptations." The trap was closing. Daniel needed to buy more time. "Of course," he replied smoothly. "I'll request complete schematics from Earth Command immediately. In the meantime, perhaps we could discuss the cultural exchange program in more detail." That evening, Daniel managed to slip away briefly during a ceremonial dinner. He met Captain Martinez's security officer in a service corridor. "The Endeavor is ready," the officer reported quietly. "First Officer Hernandez has implemented all contingency plans. We can extract the team on your signal." "Not yet," Daniel replied. "We need concrete proof of their intentions for Earth Command. The final treaty signing is scheduled for tomorrow. That's when we make our move." Later that night, Daniel received an urgent encrypted message from Captain Martinez. The Krell had accelerated their timeline dramatically. A massive fleet was assembling just beyond the system's edge, clearly positioning for a jump toward human space. The message ended with, "Whatever you're planning, do it soon. We may not. Have another day." Daniel stood at the window of his quarters looking out at the alien landscape. Tomorrow, the Krell expected him to sign the final treaty that would effectively surrender human autonomy. Instead, he would deliver a very different message, one that would likely end any chance of peace but might save humanity from subjugation. As he prepared his evidence and speech for the morning ceremony, Daniel knew the diplomatic phase of the mission was about to end. What came next would depend on how the Krell responded to having their deception exposed, and whether the human delegation could survive the aftermath of the truth. The grand hall of the Krell Council chamber was filled to capacity. Hundreds of high-ranking Krell officials had gathered to witness the historic signing of the final treaty between Earth and the Krell Dominion. Ornate decorations hung from the crystalline walls and ceremonial guards lined the pathways, their weapons polished to a gleaming shine. Daniel Wright stood alone at the center of it all, outwardly calm, despite knowing what would come next. The human delegation had been separated from him, a security precaution that only confirmed his suspicions. The Supreme Leader's voice boomed across the chamber. "Today marks a glorious expansion of the Krell Dominion. The human species will now enjoy our protection and guidance." Daniel stepped forward, datapad in hand. The treaty waited on a ceremonial platform, its terms far more restrictive than even the preliminary accord had suggested. This wasn't an alliance. It was surrender disguised as friendship. Supreme Leader, High Commander Vexar, honored members of the Krell Dominion, Daniel began, his voice steady. "Before I sign this historic document, I wish to express Earth's appreciation for your hospitality." He tapped his datapad, activating the presentation system. The chamber's main display screen flickered to life. "In the spirit of complete transparency between new allies, I'd like to share what we've learned about the Krell during our time here." Vexar stepped forward suddenly. "This is not part of the ceremony." Daniel continued as if he hadn't heard. "We've discovered Krell advance forces already positioned at 3 human colonies." The screen displayed intercepted Krell communications and fleet movements. "We've translated the actual Krell words for peace, protection, and alliance, all of which share root forms with your terms for subjugation." Murmurs spread through the assembled Krell. The Supreme Leader's neck frill expanded fully, a sign of anger. "These are misunderstandings," the leader hissed. "Translation errors." "Perhaps," Daniel replied calmly. "But what about these?" The screen changed to show Krell invasion plans, complete timetables for the occupation of Earth and its colonies. "Or the death of our diplomat who discovered your planned territorial realignments." Intelligence Officer Zintak signaled to the guards. They moved quickly, surrounding Daniel and cutting off all exits. "You have made a grave miscalculation, Ambassador Wright," the Supreme Leader said coldly. "You will sign the treaty. Then you will contact your ship and order them to stand down. Your deception changes nothing except the treatment your species will receive under our rule." Daniel smiled. "I'm afraid I've made a different calculation entirely." He tapped his datapad one final time. "Captain Martinez now." The lights in the chamber flickered momentarily. High Commander Vexar received an urgent communication. His eyes widened as he turned to the Supreme Leader. "The human vessel has broken orbit. It has disappeared from our sensors." Daniel faced the enraged Supreme Leader. "While I've been entertaining you here, the Endeavor has been transmitting everything we've learned to Earth Command. The Krell's true intentions are now known throughout human space." The chamber erupted in chaos. Daniel was seized by Krell guards and dragged away as the Supreme Leader ordered immediate execution of the invasion plans. But Daniel knew it was already too late. The element of surprise was lost. In the cold depths of space beyond the Viridian system, Captain Lisa Martinez watched the tactical display aboard the Endeavor. They had escaped using a maneuver no logical species would attempt, skimming dangerously close to Verid Prime's unstable moon to mask their engine signature before making a blind jump to pre-planned coordinates. Status of the transmission? She asked First Officer Hernandez. Complete, Captain. Earth Command confirms receipt of all data. Admiral Jackson has ordered immediate implementation of Protocol Shattered Mirror. Lisa nodded grimly. The Krell would expect humans to react with panic, to concentrate forces around Earth and major colonies. Instead, Protocol Shattered Mirror called for dispersed resistance, quick strike counterattacks, and strategies that would confuse the rule-bound Krell military. And Ambassador Wright? She asked quietly. Hernandez shook his head. No communication since his signal. We have to assume he's been captured. Lisa clenched her jaw. He knew the risks. Our job now is to make sure his sacrifice wasn't in vain. Daniel Wright sat in a bare cell deep within a Krell military complex. His diplomatic uniform had been taken, replaced with a simple gray jumpsuit. Despite the circumstances, he felt a curious sense of calm. The first phase of his mission was complete. Now it was time for the second. The cell door opened, and Intelligence Officer Zintak entered. Your actions have triggered war, human, Zintak said flatly. Your colonies will fall one by one. Daniel looked up. You've never faced humans in combat, have you? We have studied your tactics. Studying isn't experiencing, Daniel replied. There's something you should understand about humans, Zintak. We don't fight like the other species you've conquered. The intelligence officer's neck frill twitched. Your weapons are inferior. Your numbers are smaller. Your worlds are vulnerable. All true, Daniel acknowledged. And yet, throughout our own history, those disadvantages haven't stopped humans from prevailing against overwhelming odds. 3 days later, the first reports of battle reached Daniel's cell. Zintak returned, his normally impassive face showing signs of confusion. Your colonies were evacuated before our forces arrived, he said accusingly. How did you warn them without communications? Daniel smiled slightly. Perhaps we anticipated your intentions better than you thought. The truth was more complex. The coded messages in Daniel's cultural presentation had contained evacuation orders and the activation of sleeper defense systems that Earth had quietly installed throughout its territories, just one of many contingencies humanity had prepared, despite their peaceful overtures. As weeks passed, more reports filtered through. The Krell offensive, expected to bring swift victory, had bogged down in the face of unexpected human tactics. Admiral Samuel Jackson's fleet refused to engage in traditional formation battles where Krell technology would prevail. Instead, human ships struck from hidden positions, used asteroids and planetary rings as cover, and employed maneuvers that the Krell strategic algorithms classified as irrational and failed to predict. High Commander Vexar himself visited Daniel's cell after a particularly devastating defeat at the human colony of New Terra. Your ships sacrificed themselves to destroy our command vessels, Vexar said, genuine bewilderment in his voice. The loss calculations make no sense. To you, perhaps, Daniel replied. Humans understand that sometimes sacrifice serves a greater purpose. The Supreme Leader is displeased with the progress of our campaign, Vexar admitted. Your species fights, unpredictably. Daniel leaned forward. That's because you fundamentally misunderstood what humans are, Commander. You saw our diplomatic efforts as weakness. You interpreted our desire for peace as fear. Both assumptions were mistakes. Vexar's neck frill expanded slightly. Your deception has cost us our perfect victory, human. But your species' resistance is merely postponing the inevitable. Daniel smiled. You misunderstand, Commander. We didn't come to surrender peace. We came to teach you what happens when you threaten humanity. As Vexar departed, Daniel turned to the small window of his cell, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was fighting back. And knowing his species as he did, Daniel suspected the Krell were about to receive the education of their existence. 3 months into the war, Daniel Wright sat in his cell studying the changing behavior of his guards. The once confident Krell soldiers now moved with nervous energy. Conversations in the corridors had grown tense, often ending abruptly when humans were nearby. Something had changed in the war. His cell door opened unexpectedly. Instead of Intelligence Officer Zintak or one of the regular guards, a younger Krell entered, one Daniel hadn't seen before. The Krell's scales were lighter in color, marking him as junior in rank. "Ambassador Wright," the Krell said, his translator set to a lower volume than usual. "I am Junior Officer Mekton. I must speak with you quickly." Daniel stood cautiously. "I'm listening. Your human fleets have broken through our outer defenses," Mekton said, looking nervously at the door. "Your Commander Johnson leads a counter-offensive that our strategists cannot predict." Daniel concealed his surprise at this news. "And why? Are you telling me this?" Mekton's neck frill twitched in what Daniel had learned to recognize as agitation. "The Supreme Leader has ordered deployment of forbidden weapons, planet killers. They will target your colony worlds if your fleet continues to advance." Now Daniel understood. "You disagree with this order." "It violates our oldest laws," Mekton confirmed. Many younger Krell questioned the wisdom of this war. "We were taught humans were primitive, emotional, easy to conquer. Instead, you fight with unexpected skill and show mercy to captured Krell soldiers." A noise in the corridor made Mekton stiffen. "I must go, but know this. Not all Krell support this path to destruction." After Mekton left, Daniel paced his small cell. If the Krell were considering planet killers, the war had reached a critical point. Somehow, he needed to escape and warn the human. Fleet Commander Nicole Johnson stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, the flagship of humanity's liberation fleet. The view screen showed the tactical situation. Human ships had broken through the Krell defensive line using maneuvers no logical species would attempt, surprising the aliens who relied too heavily on battle computers and established doctrine. "The path to Verid Prime is open, Commander," her tactical officer reported. "The Krell fleet is regrouping around their homeworld." Nicole nodded. "And the Endeavor?" "Captain Martinez has completed her stealth approach to the far side of Verid Prime. Her team is ready for the extraction mission." "Tell her to proceed," Nicole ordered. "Finding Ambassador Wright and the other captives is priority 1. We need to move quickly. Intelligence suggests the Krell leadership is growing desperate." In his cell, Daniel heard unusual activity in the corridors outside. Alarms sounded briefly before cutting off. Then silence followed by the sound of running feet. His door slid open suddenly. Captain Lisa Martinez stood there, phase rifle in hand, with 2 armored security officers beside her. "You look terrible," she said with a grin. Daniel laughed despite himself. "You're late." "Traffic was terrible," Lisa replied, handing him a weapon. "We need to move fast. The Krell are preparing something big in an underground facility beneath this complex." As they moved through the corridors, Daniel saw signs of fighting, but surprisingly little resistance. "Where are all the guards?" "Most of their forces are being deployed to counter our fleet," Lisa explained. "And there appears to be some internal conflict among the Krell. Some units are standing down rather than fighting." They rounded a corner and nearly collided with Junior Officer Mekton, who was leading a small group of Krell. Weapons were raised on both sides before Daniel stepped forward. "Wait, Mekton, are you here to stop us?" The young Krell lowered his weapon. "The opposite, Ambassador. The planetary defense facility has been activated. The Supreme Leader intends to destroy 3 of your worlds as a demonstration. We seek to prevent this." Daniel looked at Lisa, who nodded cautiously. "A temporary alliance, then." "This way," Mekton said. "But hurry. High Commander Vexar personally oversees the weapon launch." The combined human Krell group fought their way down to a massive underground chamber. At its center stood an imposing weapon array, humming with energy as it prepared to fire. High Commander Vexar turned in shock as they burst into the control room. "Traitors!" he hissed at Mekton and his followers. "No, Commander," Mekton replied. "We are true to the original values of the Krell, before conquest became our only purpose. Daniel stepped forward. It's over, Vexar. Your fleet is retreating. Your forces are divided. Shut down the weapon. Vexar's neck frill expanded fully in rage. Never! Humans must learn their place in the order of things. The order has changed, Daniel said firmly. Human ships surround your homeworld. We could have bombarded it from orbit, but we didn't. That's the difference between us, Vexar. We came for our people, not for revenge. The commander hesitated, and in that moment, Lisa signaled her team. They moved swiftly, securing the control room while Mekton's followers disabled the weapon system. Vexar stared at Daniel with something like bewilderment. Why not destroy us when you have the chance? We would not have shown such restraint. That's precisely why you lost, Daniel replied. Hours later, Daniel stood in the Krell Council chamber, now serving as a negotiation room between human fleet representatives and a hastily assembled Krell Transition Council made up mostly of younger officials. The Supreme Leader and his inner circle had been removed from power by their own kind, unwilling to face extinction for a war based on arrogance and miscalculation. Commander Johnson approached Daniel, extending her hand. Ambassador Wright, your intelligence was invaluable to our victory. Daniel shook her hand. Not a victory yet, Commander. Now comes the harder part, building a real peace. Is that possible after everything that's happened? She asked. Daniel looked across the room where Mekton was speaking earnestly with a group of human officers. I believe it is. The Krell thought. Our desire for peace was weakness. They've learned otherwise, now they're ready to listen. In the days that followed, a true peace accord began to take shape, one founded on mutual respect rather than domination. The younger generation of Krell, represented by Mekton and others like him, sought to rebuild their society's relationship with other species. As Daniel prepared to return to Earth aboard the Endeavor, Vexar, now stripped of rank and awaiting trial, requested a final meeting. I do not understand your species, the former commander admitted. You fight with unmatched ferocity, yet show mercy when victory is yours. Daniel considered the fallen leader. Humanity learned through our own bloody history that true strength lies not just in winning conflicts, but in how you end them. We didn't come to destroy the Krell, Vexar. We came to join the galactic community as equals. Vexar looked up. And now? Now we begin again, Daniel replied. Next time perhaps you'll believe us when we say we come in peace. As the Endeavor broke orbit, Daniel Wright stood at the view screen watching the blue-green world of Verid Prime recede into the distance. What had begun as a diplomatic mission became a war, and now held the promise of something new, a genuine understanding between two very different species. Humanity had proven itself not just through strength of arms, but through strength of principle. They had been sent to make peace. The Krell had chosen war. In the end, they got peace anyway, but on humanity's terms.